guys hear me? I'm really excited to be going live. Here's the deal. I am 15 years sober, and I'm a grown-ass woman. When I was getting sober, I did not want to be sober. I was not ready to be sober. I had overdosed on cocaine and was still absolutely not ready to be sober. And my story is a tough one. I'm here to talk to the people who are not yet sober, who might need to be, who are sober curious, like a lot of Gen Zers, and who are questioning the normalcy that is putting toxins into our body. And also to the person who's just struggling, who's got emotional pain points and cycles of dysfunction that they keep finding themselves in. Because I got news for you. The template for treating addiction or emotional cycles of dysfunction is the same. Really, it's a soul sickness that we're feeling. And it comes from the inside of us. And we try so very hard to treat the sickness from the outside of us. I'm one of those people that grew up around addiction. It was super normal to me. My mom abused prescription pills. My dad was the family enabler. My sister was experimenting. And so for me to try drugs and alcohol while still performing at a very high level was completely normal. And it took a long time before drugs and alcohol got out of control. But even when it did, I was running on my disposition of being perfect all the time. And perfect was always a measure that came from outside of me. If I got a perfect grade or if I had a perfect body, I was good enough. So even though my drinking and drugging was spiraling out of control, everything else in my life was so very controlled. And those things mattered more. And those things justified the fact that I didn't really need to do anything about my addiction problem. And I remember going into AA and sitting in those rooms and listening to those 12 steps thinking, no way. No way. This will never be me. I don't look like you. I don't drink like you. I don't smell like you. I don't live like you. And the language, the sound of the religious intonation just dripping off the steps, the word God, none of it landed. Because when I grew up, my mom was very clear that the only person you can count on is yourself, and that there's no such thing as God, and the people who believe in God are idiots. Right? So then I'm told, oh, by the way, in order for you to stop abusing drugs and alcohol, you have to get down with God. And I was like, that's not true. So I went running for another year and a half, and I just used other things as addicts do. I found a way to tame the nearly overdosing and dying situation of cocaine and just started abusing downers instead of uppers. Not that you can't, by the way, die from downers. You absolutely can. And then I got caught, if you will. So the person I was dating, who I had lied to 1,000 times in my addiction, who thought I had stopped abusing drugs, caught this prescription pill bottle in our sock drawer because we lived together. And it was a bottle of pills that whenever I needed them to be refilled, my father would drive into the city and refill them. And he saw those and was like, really? You're still doing this again? And I was afraid he was going to leave me. So once again, it was really something outside of my own sense of urgency for my own life and my own spirit that brought me back to a 12-step meeting. It wasn't birthed from inside of me. I wasn't at the bottom yet. I wasn't at spiritual rock bottom. That would come many, many years later. And for the next 5 years, I did the best I could in the program without believing in God. I believed in myself. I believed solely in my ability to control, manage, and manipulate the world around me to keep me safe and whole. And the thing is, we say in 12-step rooms traditionally that the addict is stuck in ego and completely self-centered and kind of a piece of shit. And the trouble with that is every addict that comes into those rooms has so much shame, and we're not meeting them in that place. I'm not saying that they should get away with the things they've done and that they haven't made massive mistakes and hurt people, maybe even killed people. It's serious. The consequences of an addict's decisions are serious, and there is a time and place where we get to it and we truly change our behavior and our lives, and we live differently. We commit to living differently. But to be told that I was just stuck in self and stuck in ego is actually missing the mark, right? Because I was stuck in deeply ingrained patterns in my nervous system that kept me safe as a girl. So it was great that the 12 steps were there, but not if they were coming up against the very beliefs that I was taught as a kid that kept me safe. So now the steps were actually unsafe. I knew drinking and using drugs was unsafe, and also the steps felt unsafe. So it would take 5 years and a really severe marital crisis before I hit spiritual rock bottom. And spiritual rock bottom is something that nobody can convince you of, make you ready for, buy for you, preach to you. Spiritual rock bottom is a level often of desperation where you have tried everything the way you've always done it to solve your problems and failed. It's a place where you don't want to die, but you absolutely don't know how to live. So there I was. It was at that time in my life where, I mean, the story is wild, and I wrote a book about it. So I won't get into the details, okay? But the level of insanity around my marital situation was so severe, and I was losing my mind. I was sleeping on couches for many, many months. And then I got my own place, and I met a woman who suggested that we do the steps around my marriage. Right? So what does that mean? You know, instead of step 1 being, I am powerless over alcohol, it was, I'm powerless over what's happening in my marriage. I'm powerless over my husband pulling away from me, over the fact that no matter what I say or do, it won't change his mind and make him forgive me again. I'm powerless over the future of my marriage. I'm powerless over basically people, places, things, and situations, right? Everything that's outside of me that I so badly want to control, I actually don't have any control over that. And when I try to exert power over those things that I can't control, my life becomes unmanageable in the following ways. Well, I'm constantly obsessing about what he's thinking, saying, or doing. I am ruminating. I'm in a ton of fear. I feel really anxious. And I'm spinning. I have no sense of dignity. I have no sense of self-worth. And we did the steps just like that, one after another, in this really practical way. And then we got to the 9th step, which is making an amends. I had made so many amends. You know, when you are in a 12-step program and you get to that place, because everything is framed as you're a self-centered piece of shit addict, you have a long list of amends to make, typically, right? The people you really wronged. And you come to them and you, without wanting anything in return, tell them, I am so sorry. And this is how I intend on amending the behavior moving forward. And you want nothing in return, right? I had done that. I had done many, many amends, even to my dad, who co-signed my addiction, who in my recovery continued to enable my mom and sister, which made me so, so angry. I had found my way forward, making many, many difficult amends. And it wasn't until I worked with this woman in this level of spiritual crises in my life where she said to me, have you ever made an amends to yourself? It seems so obvious. It seems so simple now, 10 years later. But it was revolutionary to me at the time. I was a professional self-lacerator. I only knew how to beat myself to a pulp. I really believed that the breadcrumbs I was getting in my marriage, even though I was starving, was what I deserved until this point in my life when she asked me that critical question. And I actually was able to start considering what it meant to be a person who at one time had very few tools and made really bad choices, who was now a woman who was worthy of love, connection, and belonging. That I might have made bad choices, but that didn't make me a bad person. The reason why that was so, so important is because I had a way to clear the shame that was corroding the lens through which I was seeing my marriage and my life, to be honest, and everything I felt I deserved. And then the miracle of having a way to be kinder to myself is that I could hear my intuitive voice. The one when you're young that makes you just say what you want to say with no filter, the gut level reaction, your instinct, whatever you want to call it. I hadn't heard her voice, in decades. And again, that voice was shut off and shut down early on because when I would push back against the things that were happening in my house, my parents would, don't you ask that again. So it makes perfect sense that the voice that took over my life was my inner critic. It also makes sense that if that's true, I was running my life into the ground, even though I was physically sober, right? So hearing the sound, the texture, the feeling of my intuitive voice was so, so beautiful and revolutionary for my life because I knew it was something totally different than the voice I had been living my life by. She was calm and curious and compassionate and always suggesting an idea, nudging me in a certain direction, right? And so in the beginning of all of that, it was like, who's that? And then also, she's speaking to me really kindly. Maybe I should listen in if I'm going to be in this new practice of compassionate self-talk. And then if she makes a suggestion for my life, for my job, for my marriage, maybe I should take it. It's coming from me somewhere. It seems like it's coming from a higher self than my perfectionism. So it's got to be better than that. And sure enough, that's the leap of faith. And then I start having wins when I listen to my intuition, and the wins start to stack up, right? And if we fast forward to current day, right? I'm 15 years sober, as I said in the beginning. And I don't think there's a more important relationship in my whole life than the one I have with my intuition, which is now, by the way, the God of my own understanding. When I get quiet enough to tune in to that part of me, I always feel better. And I always have more clarity, even if the clarity is, hang on, don't do anything yet. We're not sure yet. This modern trauma-informed approach to the 12 steps became a life raft for me as I navigated some of the hardest things sober. The most recent of which is the loss of my sister, Jessica, to a drug overdose. And I set out to close down my clinic as a physical therapist and write a book. My book is out now. It's called Breaking the Circuit: How to Rewire Your Mind for Hope, Resilience, and Joy in the Face of Trauma. It is a modern take on the 12 steps so that anyone, addict or not, can use them to navigate life's hardest things. I want to be known as the girl who 12-stepped the world. I want that spiritual template to be current with what we now know in 2024 about psychology, childhood trauma, and addiction. And I want it in everybody's back pocket as a template that is birthed from inside of us. If we practice it long enough, it's woven into the fabric of who we are, so that no matter what happens every day, big or small, I'm talking losing someone you love to a traffic jam, when you hate being late, and you can pull out any one of them and use it to have access to more peace and more power. I am on a big book tour. I talk on stages. I want to be one of the greatest public speakers on earth. So you heard it here first. I'm creating my own luck, getting into the rooms with the right people. I coach people in mind, body, and spirit. And now that I have my doctorate in physical therapy with life coaching and this template, the container in which I can support people on a healing journey is so robust and raw and baked in not just science, but the soulfulness of my lived experience. And it feels so good to come out of this grief cave and be of service. So I wanted to come on and do a live. I want to do lives way more often. It's an amazing way for me to get the message out totally for free. It's a way for me to get my reps in as a speaker. It's a way for me to share my story, because you never know who's watching. And if you're on the other side of the screen and anything I said helps you, then it was totally worth me doing this. That's the whole point. So if you want to talk more, I'm here. Send me a message. I'm really active on Instagram at Dr. Samantha Harte, so the same handle as my YouTube page. You can also just email me or message me on YouTube. My email is samantha@drsamanthaharte.com. And I really look forward to connecting and coming on here more. Have an amazing day. And if no one told you yet, I'm so proud of you.